As we approach the end of the first 10 nights of the month of Muharram, in which we mourn for Imam Hussain alayhi salam, and as the nights of sorrow and pain get more intense with the martyrdom of more of Al-Husayn's companions and his family, we must use and utilize these nights to speak about Al-Husayn. These nights are dedicated to the Master of Martyrs, to say the Shuhada, and to the companions of Al-Husayn alayhi salam, and to remember their suffering. But we must do them justice in their remembrance. It can't be a case of merely narrating the historical facts of the tragedy, even though this is an absolute necessity. We must remember and make known what Hussain stood for and how we can implement it in our lives today. We've already established in the past few nights and in the gathering that we had just before this that Hussain wanted us to continue in his revolutionary legacy and to be the Shia who do not simply attend majalis for rituals and for the sake of lip service. We established that we need to be proactive in challenging oppression, in challenging tyranny, and to start revolutionary movements to stand up against the evil that we face in our society and in our world today. We cannot sit quietly and watch the Ummah and our society cave in and destroy itself. We need to take the proactive steps to be at the forefront of the movements which combat this. So, to go back to the motives of Imam Hussain Salam's revolution, the motives were numerous. Some were direct grievances of the general people, whilst others were ideological motives. The following ones are not, they don't even come close to the amount of real motives, but they're the ones I want to touch on for the purposes of tonight. The most important motive was to counter Yazid's attempt to distort Islamic concepts and ideals, and this aspect was of extreme importance, and it preoccupied the minds of most of the responsible Muslims in society at that time. The fabrication of narrations from the Holy Prophet and Ahadith was all too common at this time as well, and it had a poisonous effect on the lives of Muslims because they were becoming confused as to what true Islam actually was. And this was given the Umayyads, at least for a little while, free pass to carry out their inhuman deeds and their evil policies. But the mask of religion which they tried to hide their un-Islamic conduct with became extremely dangerous. In the long run, this could have changed Islamic concepts of ruling and of social ideals, and thus stripping off the mask and exposing the true Umayyad's picture was of the utmost importance and necessity for Imam Hussain. So this was one of his reasons. Secondly, the state at the time, the Umayyad state structure, was built on a completely un-Islamic basis. So, the Quraysh were born to rule. Arabs were second-class citizens, and non-Arabs constituted the base or the very bottom of society's pyramid structure at the time. That was the general social picture of the Muslim world under the Umayyad dynasty. Freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom of religion in choosing who was your leader at that time was denied. And when someone dared to express an opinion or an idea which was contrary to that of the ruling Umayyad government, prison became his home. His property was robbed, his family's lives would be at danger, and of course that person's life was also at stake. Thirdly, one of the other reasons for Al-Husayn's revolution and the motives behind it was that the Umayyads considered the Muslim world to be their own property. So, the zakat and other Islamic fees which the society and the community would pay was collected, but no one knew where this money was going. No one knew what it was being spent on or if it was going to a righteous place. Of course, under the Umayyads we knew that all of the money which they collected went to an unrighteous place to further their own causes and goals. The issue was that no one at the time could question that. As we mentioned, anyone who stood up and gave an opinion contrary to that of the government at the time would be silenced. Large gifts, big fancy donations were given to a few cruel governors who ruled in certain different areas of the time, and to tribal chiefs as well, in order to secure their allegiance. It was a corrupt mafia state, if you want to put it like that in modern day terms. Large sums of money, for example, were wastefully spent on racing horses, racing camels, on gambling, on making wine and alcohol, and on buying slave women to entertain the high class and high ranking people of the time. Hence, the majority of Muslims were left at a state where you could almost call famine time, where people were near starving, whilst the ruling group enjoyed all the social, material, and worldly pleasures and privileges in this society. And very lastly, one of the motives for Hussein's revolution was that the Muslims had apparently gotten used to the un-Islamic rule of the Umayyads as time passed by. It began to seem normal for them. They began to think of this type of rule as something which was normal under the Islamic government. Their resistance against the evil and oppression started to slacken, and some people began adjusting themselves to the new conditions of this Umayyad government. Hence, the revolutionary spirit of Islam began to disappear gradually from the lives of the Muslims and from their thoughts. Of course, when we talk about the revolutionary resistance mindset, this was the mindset of, as we mentioned in the last couple of nights, of Ali, of Fatima, of Hassan and Hussain. Therefore, a new stimulant for these people's souls was necessary to activate their lives and to try and restore some form of correct Islamic conduct to the society. So that's the motives for the revolution. Now comes to the procedure of the revolution of Imam Hussain alayhi salam itself. So, Imam Hussain alayhi salam made no doubt of his intentions to fight against the regime of the Umayyad government. The speeches which he delivered in Mecca, for example, were consistent, as was the will which he entrusted to his brother Muslim ibn Hanafiya, who remained in Medina. That will, by the way, was in fact a formal declaration that he was going to start a revolution against the government. And what Imam Hussain alayhi salam wrote in this will was that he said, I am not campaigning for unwillingness to accept righteousness or having intent to do mischief and to suppress people. Indeed, I have decided to reform my grandfather's ummah. I want to enjoin what is right and to forbid what is wrong. People who accept my call for being right, then Allah is their master, is the master of righteous people. And those who reject my call, then I shall be steadfast until God passes his judgment on them. And indeed, Allah is the most righteous judge. This is something to ponder over and to reflect on. Now, during the Imam's travels to the land of Karbala, he never ceased calling people to strive for the true Islamic ideas of social justice, for a true Islamic government, and to wage war against any deviation from true Muhammadan Islamic conduct. In his speech in Karbala, the Imam quoted from his grandfather, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, saying, he who sees a cruel government violating Allah's laws, breaking his covenant, acting in contrast to the traditions of the Prophet, being mischievous and suppressing people, then he does not try to change that ruler by action or speech. Indeed, God has promised them with an appropriate place in hell. This should be really scary. And this is something which we need to apply in today's world, which we were talking about in our group on Saturday earlier on. How do we implement the message of Hussain in today's world? What the Prophet says, and what Imam Hussain relates and narrates from the Prophet, is that if you see someone acting in such a way which is so contrary to the true Muhammadan Islam and trying to distort it and being deviant in their beliefs, and you do nothing but stay silent and watch on, your place is hellfire. Is that not enough for you to make a change? It should be. He also said that, O people, those Umayyads have pledged allegiance to the devil and they have left Allah's obedience. They have spread corruption, suspended the application of Islamic laws and taken themselves the wealth of the Muslims, besides forbidding what is permitted and allowing what is forbidden. Now, any objective study or analysis of Imam Hussein's revolution will show something unique. It will show that Imam Hussain was a leader who predicted his own death before even setting off, before even making that outward stance of a revolutionary nature, but yet he continued on and he carried out all the necessary preparations for his campaign. And at Mecca, Imam Hussain addresses his people and he says, O people, as if my body be cut to pieces by spears and ropes in Karbala, there is no question of the day which was already written. In fact, God's satisfaction is our aim, and we are the family of the Holy Prophet. The way Imam Hussain alayhi salam and his companions fought was a glorious symbol of bravery, of nobility. As we mentioned earlier on, there were only 72 people fighting against thousands, tens of thousands of people of the Umayyad army. And this shows us that even when you're outnumbered, even when you are the minority, you take your stance with firmness and you accept what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained and what He has planned for you. Even with this imbalance of fighting power in the Battle of Karbala, we see that the Umayyad army used the most vicious and despicable methods in warfare and in fighting. The Umayyad army went to the extent of preventing them from drinking water, for example, and tortured them for 3 days in the burning heat of the Arabian desert. But still, the firm faith of Imam Hussain alayhi salam and of his followers and of his companions and family in their cause was never shaken by this. Imam Hussain said to his companions, "Leave, you are free to leave me just now. You know what's going to happen to you. Indeed, it's death which is going to come upon you if you stay with me." But none of them even had the thought entering into their mind that we should leave the Imam at this time. Thus, Imam Hussain alayhi salam, his companions and his family set on this everlasting torch, this beacon of light of jihad against deviation from Islamic conduct, and they smashed the myth of the Umayyad government, and they smashed the concept of keeping allegiance or pledging allegiance to evil, corrupt regimes and governments. So we discussed the motives of the revolution and the procedure of the revolution. But what was the results of the revolution? This is the most important part of analysing Imam Hussein's revolution. What does the revolution mean in history? So some people who are not familiar with the concept of Imam Hussein's revolution or with its motives, they ask and they innocently inquire about the results of it. Some people even question the wisdom and the logic for Imam Hussain alayhi salam to bring 70 people to fight against an army of thousands of people. An army so powerful, the Umayyad army was huge, and they weren't just huge in numbers, but in the quality of their warfare as well. They were known to be very skilled fighters. So some people say, what is the logic behind this? If he knew it was going to be fatal, then why would he even bother? And although we discussed the revolution's motives, we need to take a little analysis of the changes of the Muslim world after Imam Hussein's revolution, which is very important to mention. Firstly, Yazid, by murdering Imam Hussain, who was the grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was a great shock to the entire Muslim world and to the Ummah as a whole. This isn't to mention the way in which he was murdered, or the treatment which was given his family. No, set that aside. But the simple act of killing the grandson of the Prophet shook the Muslim world at the time. This was a man who had the highest esteem and the respect of all Muslims. Consequently, after the revolution and after Imam Hussain and his family were butchered and slaughtered in the most horrific way, huge amounts, in fact the vast majority of the Muslim world began to disassociate themselves from the government of the Umayyads and their deeds and their policies. Of course, who wants to be on the side of the cursed ones who brutally killed the grandson of the Holy Prophet? The grandson of the Prophet, who the Prophet had praised in such high esteem, to then slaughter him and then for the Muslims to then take the side of that person was something even they feared. Even throughout their silence beforehand, once they had witnessed the brutality of it, they began to disassociate from the Umayyads. Thus, as a result, the revolution had done the task of unveiling the Umayyads' un-Islamic character to the general public and to the society at that time, and it left no doubt in any sane or rational-minded person's heart about the substance of the Umayyad government and what their true nature and characteristics were. Therefore, the concepts which the Umayyads were propagating and pushing out a lot of propaganda in relation to distort the ideals and views of Islam found no supporters after Imam Hussein's sacrifice. And in that sense, Imam Hussain succeeded in his mission. Of course, he succeeded in so many other ways than by changing the perception of the Muslim world, but this was one of the main goals in which he sought to do, and he was successful in doing it. Secondly, the Imam's revolution set a lively example as to the duty of Muslims in such conditions. It had penetrated so deeply into the hearts and into the minds of the Muslims, and it had created such great pain within them for not doing their Islamic duty, for not standing up for the grandson of the Holy Prophet. And this feeling, which really pained and disheartened the Muslims who had stayed silent previously, transformed into repentance and then into an open revolt against the Umayyad regime. And thus the revolution provided to be that stimulant, that necessary change for them to move their spirits and to create a dynamic movement for them to create something better. A series of revolutions followed on from Imam Hussein's revolution, and the revolutionary spirit and reforms then began to emerge at different intervals throughout time in the Islamic history. For example, we have Tawabi's revolution, which took place immediately after the tragedy of Karbala. And then there was another revolution in Medina, which was aimed at doing away with the Umayyad government as Imam Hussain alayhi salam had intended to do. Then we have al-Mukhtar al-Thaqafi, of course, who led another revolution which stormed the Umayyad regime in Iraq. And he was able to punish all of the principal collaborators in the campaign against Imam Hussain alayhi salam in Iraq. Then there was the revolution against Hajjaj and Abdul Malik, which was another positive and successful result, which based itself on the revolutionary spirit of the Imam. However, there were also a chain of revolutions in all parts of the Muslim world, which eventually did away with the Umayyad regime. Imam Hussein's revolution was the principal slogan of all of these revolutionaries in their fight against the Umayyads. The Abbasids then came, and soon their conduct was also exposed as that which was not what the Holy Prophet and his family had promoted and ordained for the people to follow. The secret key then of any blessed revolution, of any successful revolution, lies in Imam Hussain alayhi salam. You have many famous revolutionaries even in the modern day. People like Nelson Mandela, people like Che Guevara, who have they themselves said that their revolutionary spirit was something which they found in Imam Hussain alayhi salam. The unshakable conviction which the Imam had, which put material gain to a much lesser position than that of any other human being, and whose ideal goal was to ultimately seek the satisfaction of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These were the ideals that were demonstrated by the Imam, especially when the Muslims at that time were in need of such behaviour. The revolution of Imam Hussain was not solely a revolution then for changing government. It was so that if that was the case, it would be wrong to call it a revolution. Imam Hussain was advocating not just changing government, but a drastic change in the entire social setup of society, of the economic, of the political structures at the time, and to refine Islamic concepts from foreign ideas and un-Islamic concepts which had crept into the hearts and minds and thoughts of the Muslims in this area. Imam Hussain wanted to change the life of the Muslims to be in conformity with the Islamic laws and ideals of his grandfather. And indeed this explains one main reason for why the Imam was let down by the tribes of Kufa after being promised their support, and his call was ignored by the rest of the Muslim world. And hence, a revolution meant to Imam Hussain a drastic change for the lives of people, or the collective lives of people. And he intended to do this on a large scale, to awaken people's senses and minds to what was necessary. Now, if we look to the battlefield of Karbala, we see how Imam Zayn al-Abidin has narrated an example of the astounding, exemplary patience and steadfastness of his father. And the Imam has said that as much as the circumstances worsened, the Imam's face brightened, and he used to find tranquility in this tragic moment. So much so that some people who witnessed the Imam in battle said, "Look at how the Imam is so heedless of death. Look at how little he cares about being slain." Abdullah ibn Ammar has narrated that I saw Imam Hussain when they gathered against him, and he began to attack those who were on his right hand side, and he terrified them completely. Wallah, I have not seen such a person who has lost his sons and his companions to such a vicious death to be more steadfast and determined. And wallah, I have not seen anyone like him before or after him. At that moment, the Imam began to attack his enemies and conducted a ferocious battle which people had never seen before in their lifetimes. Whilst huge multitudes of crowds were crowding on the right-hand side of the Imam sees these people and begins to recite the following lines of poetry. The Imam says, death is better than a life of humiliation, and humiliation is better than the hellfire. After this, the Imam goes and attacks the left-hand side, and he says the following, I am Hussain ibn Ali, and I swear I shall not turn back. I shall defend the family of my father, and I shall follow the religion of Rasulullah. Yes, you are Hussain, who filled the world with nobility and with greatness. You are the one who did not turn back because of fear or terror. You are the one who never humiliated yourself, nor became heedless. Rather, you moved forward in the way of confrontation, and you destroyed the ambushes of the oppressors, of the sinners. You are the one who followed the religion of your grandfather, Rasulullah, and you are the one who promoted his message and reformed his ummah. You know, the thirst of Imam Hussain alayhi salam affected so many different things in regards to his body. His lips began to wither and turn white due to the heat and due to the thirst in which he suffered. His liver had begun to split open due to the absence of water in such a way that he became despaired of life itself, and the army which faced against him knew that he would not be alive after his liver had failed on him. Then the Imam says to them, give me a drop of water as my liver is shattered and my tongue has become wounded due to the severity of chewing on it, such that it has become in our traditions which says that the eyes of Imam Hussain had become sightless due to his thirst. Do you know what the last moment of Imam Hussain was? The Imam began to smile for the everlasting success in which he had achieved. He smiled because he did his duty in pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is all that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted from him. For the soul of Sayyid al-Shuhada, and for his family, and for his companions, and for all the mu'mineen and all the shuhada, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after 11 salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.